Hello and thank you for tuning into the presentation of our paper, Quantifying the Intangible, a tool for retrospective protocol studies of sketching during the early conceptual design of architecture. My name is Jessica Bielski and I'm presenting in the name of our research group called the CAADRIA Research Group, involving my current colleagues Christoph Langenhahn, Victor Eisenstadt, former colleague Christoph Ziegler, and also our supervisors Andreas Denge and Klaus-Dieter Althoff. The answer is actually quite simple. Architects use sketching as a language to communicate ideas with others, but also to communicate their inner dialogue as a catalyst for the design development. But it's also a craft which supports the development of ideas and design intentions. It makes ideas tangible, give it physical form and bend it on paper. So it is actually also a tool for evaluation of the sketch and also self-evaluation. Thus, we can actually assume that sketch-based interaction is an intuitive interaction method for computer-aided architectural design. However, the previous design described vagueness and ambiguity, which supports the exploration and the discovery, so the design process itself, of finding solutions or solution aspects through self-inspiration, and this really like finding and discovering the solutions in the sketch is, on the other hand, an obstacle for recognition and distinguishing information in hand drawings for computers. So the question is, how can we examine or segment or categorize the design process by the means of sketching? For example, Lazot thinks of it rather only in terms of the development, so the sketch as a tool. So he focuses, first of all, on the two phases, so the elaboration and the reduction. The elaboration is creating a large amount of alternatives and variants sketches, which is then followed by the reduction. So the decision-making through selecting solutions or solution aspects to run through this again and again as an iterative cycle. Buxton sees it quite similar. He describes it rather more as a tree following along solution branches and discarding other ideas or solutions by ignoring those branches. Lawson, on the other hand, prefers to focus on different kinds of design phases, which he also refers to as design activities, because he sees them without any order. He focuses rather on the implied mental activities than the actual sketching activities, for example, creating a large amount of sketches. He's instead talking about the analysis, synthesis, and evaluation, also referred to as the ASE model, which are negotiating to each other, while these only fit perfectly for one unique problem, which only has one befitting solution. So they really work like a puzzle with each other. But he also emphasizes on the use of sketching as graphic thinking for finding the solution to the design problem. He sees the opportunity for creating reproducible results of the design process, but without characterizing designing. So he recommends the segmenting of relational sequences instead of time slices when it comes to categorizing the design process, and make use of protocol studies. These are, be it sketch protocol studies, same as design protocol studies, a common approach for attempt. Thus, we created an approach for producing quantifiable data. We propose 4 main categories within this approach. We have a study, the acquired data, and the data analysis. Within our study, the architects sketch on a piece of paper on top of a digital drawing board by a Wacom for tracing the drawing while being video recorded. Afterwards, there's the retrospective reporting while watching the sketching video, and it is again video recorded. Thus, we receive video files, which are transcribed into JSON files, and a sketch build of the tracing, which also includes timestamps and pen pressure and coordinates. Simultaneously, we create custom labels for quantifying the temporal data of the protocol study for sequencing the design process. And finally, we introduce all the respective files into our open source protocol analyzer tool. So in order to fulfill this approach, our equipment and study setup is we we have a tripod with a rotating arm, and on top is a pivoting 4K webcam. So which looks like this when you start a session. This is the Sketch Protocol Analyzer 1.0, excuse me. And they can start with naming the session and then uploading the required data in the respective category. This setup was tested with 2 volunteering architects, and we made some modifications afterwards into the Sketch Protocol Analyzer 1.2. And for example, we integrated the option for the video of the sketching video and also respective transcript, as one of the architects particularly verbalized comments during the sketching on taken actions or the sketch itself. So we can also include this in the analysis process. Further, we also added a pause button for the retrospective porting, which also then resulted in a so-called time correlations file. So for the analysis part, everything would fit together. And this is the Sketch Protocol Analyzer 1.2. So in the upper left, we have videos of the sketching and the retrospective, where you can switch in between. And below that, we have the data label, which shows the custom labels or the individual instances. You can switch between the tabs. For our study and purposes, we went with architectural objects, for example, walls and rooms. Then what we called the cognitive themes, so the design phases by Lawson, so the ASE model, and also the reflective practitioner, so reflection and practice inspired by Schoen and Wiggins. In the middle, we have the transcripts, which also automatically scroll down during the running video according to the time correlations file, and one can switch between the tabs of the sketching and the retrospective transcript again. And to the right, we have the sketch build, whereas we have different selection methods, for example, point selection, line selection, selection triangle, unselect, and further, and so on. But we also have an offset timing control, as well as rotating the sketch. After all of this, basically you can assign label instances to a selection of both the transcript, as you can see, but also to the sketch itself. The output are JSON files of all the previous input files and a label instance file, which references the custom labels and the ID within the respective input file. So, even though the results of this approach need to be seen on the backdrop of the researcher interpreting and manually assigning these custom labels, it is quite evident that the quantitative data can be produced from design protocol studies. The custom labels of this temporal data are indeed a quantifiable parameter, as well as the behavioral parameters provided by the Wacom software of the sketch build. Like I said, for example, pen pressure and timestamps. Further, the modifications of the Sketch Protocol Analyzer allow for all collected data to be used for the analysis process, and thus enrich the final analysis of the design process. For future work, it includes a large-scale study with working architects of different background, education, and experience level and age. We started in December last year, but it's only very slowly progressing because of the COVID-19 pandemic and ever-changing regulations. Further, we set out to create a more distinguished version of the ASE model, which you can see on the right, which also includes Lazo's split of the exploration and discovery, as well as knowledge management of Barakowski. And finally, it's about introducing the quantified sketch protocol data to an ANN, responding to the output of our open source tool, which we actually did, and we created an ANN model with high accuracy for predicting current and consecutive design phase, but that is topic of a different paper. If you want to check out our open source tool, it is available on GitHub. I have here provided the link as well as the QR code to it, and thank you very much for your attention.